Good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. Tonight, we would like to start by thanking Duro for their ongoing support in bringing you our fortnightly Q&As. I'm losing my words tonight. That's so not good.
You good?
Yep. Tonight, we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Marlene. How you going, Marlene?
Great, guys. Thank you.
That's awesome. How was your day?
Wet. Oh my gosh, the rain. But I'm loving the rain. I'm not ever going to complain. Do feel a bit sad for all those guys in Queensland, though.
Absolutely.
Awful.
But yeah, it's amazing here. So yeah, I've just been doing bookwork mostly in the office today, which I don't like. I did train my dogs early this morning, but yeah, then I'm just in the office.
Happy day. Actually, just before we get going, you highlighted what's going on in Queensland up there with the floods. If anyone's listening, I know that there's heaps of like fodder and food being prepared and donated on their way up there. I think Hay Runners is one of them that's doing that stuff as well. So if anyone wanted to get on board to help some people up there, there's people that are putting things together. So if you do a bit of research, I'd encourage anyone to jump on and support our friends up north as well.
Yeah.
So speaking of being wet and not going to complain about it, where is home, Marlene?
Home is down near Bingra. I think most people know the area of Kira, Booramuka Angus. Well, I'm just up the road from Kira, so yeah. But back in some steeper country, back up in the hills in a valley. I love the hills, and yeah, so that's been home for 38 years. Oh,
What is it about the hills?
What is it about the hills? I don't know, to be honest. You know, I think when we bought this place here, I just think the price was right, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to get into farming and, you know, land definitely wasn't as expensive back then, but it was affordable. And, yeah, I just sort of thought, well, you know, this is what I wanted to do. I was going to give it a go.
And where was home before then?
Armidale, the cold country.
You haven't gone too far. You're kind of gone west, southwest.
Yeah, no, it's northwest, so a little bit warmer. Yeah, it's up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm thinking because you're what 2 hours from Tamworth, thereabouts.
Yeah, a little bit more, closer to 3 back in here. So it's 2 hours from Armidale.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Some beautiful country up there.
I love it. I mean, you know, I think all this country with the hills, and it just aesthetically is very pretty with the hills. I mean, I get lost on flat country. Nothing to pinpoint.
So did you grow up in Armidale?
Yeah, I grew up school in Armidale, and really I was a townie, honestly, till I sort of got married, and we rented this little 100-acre place out of Armidale, and my dad said to me, you need to just get a few sheep and get some cows. So it was like 8 Herefords and a handful of sheep, and then guess what? I had to get some dogs.
Well, tell us a bit about your first dog.
Okay, well, believe it or not, my first dog was actually a border collie, and my mum bought it for me. My uncle had bred it, and yeah, so she was a border collie. I had a great relationship with her. I mean, she was probably a much better dog than I made of her at that time, you know what I mean? Because I learned so much from her, but got her as a puppy, and yeah, worked sheep in the yards, worked sheep in the paddock. Not a great cattle dog, but yeah, poked around with that. My dad was the Kelpie person. Did not like the border collie. Didn't like the border collie. So then the next thing I got is I said, well, I'll get a Kelpie. And so I got a Kelpie. So I sort of had that experience of the two breeds very early on.
Yeah.
What was it about the border collie he didn't like?
Just probably they were black and white. And border collie. Isn't that what every Kelpie person says? You know, I think a lot of the thing is she didn't have that stalk and eye, and he really liked the stalk and the eye that the Kelpies showed. You know, that sort of prowl type of thing around your stock, where she just go do the job. You know, she just go do the job. And I mean, I had no sides, or I had nothing back then. Like, it was, I look back at it, but you know, just amazing dogs, how they actually adapt to you. Their desire to want to work the stock was just, yeah, that's what I went with. I went with their desire to work the stock, and yeah, that's all there was to it back then. But yeah, I love both breeds. Down the track now, I just look unique. You know, they are uniquely different, and if you tap into that, into the two different breeds, you know, they make a great team of dogs. That's what I find, because I work all my dogs in a team, and if you've got a couple of Kelpies and a Border Collie, I think you can pretty much do anything.
Definitely. Just jumping back a step, you said you grew up in Armidale. So what were you doing in life before you were farming?
Before I was farming, I was a tennis player. I was pretty good. Yeah, I was a pretty good tennis player as a junior, and my whole thing was I was off to Wimbledon. Seriously, I say that and I laugh, but it was my mother's dream. It was definitely my mother's dream, and she was probably living her life, you know, through me doing that, because I tell you what, we went to every tennis tournament every weekend. It was just, that was what my life was. And yeah, but there was something in there. Like they were both off the land. They never owned land, but Dad was always a station manager. So my brother and my sisters, they all grew up on those stations. I didn't. I grew up in town, but I used to hear them talking about, you know, life on the station all the time. And I can remember from being about 8-year-old, I was always saying to Mum, "Can I have a horse?"
Yeah.
You know, I wanted a horse, and can I have a dog? Well, Dad had dogs because he used to do jobs for people. So I had, you know, I could see the dogs and knew what the dogs' jobs were, but I'd always wanted a horse, and my mum would never let me have a horse. And then as I got pretty handy with the tennis racket, I was definitely not going to get a horse because I was going to get hurt. So
you hold it in your hand with polo as well, and on a horse, so it's kind of like a bit of a.
Well, I guess you could say that, Daniel. You haven't ridden too many horses.
No. So, excuse my naivety, but I'm assuming as well, like there wouldn't have been too much opportunity for tennis in Armidale, so you would have done a lot of travelling.
Did a lot of travelling, yeah, and I sort of had a lot of coaching, and I had a coach that was in Sydney, so I'd spend some time in Sydney travelling back and forwards. I won a scholarship overseas, so my university time was going to be spent overseas. But I sort of probably got to that age, and I broke my ankle, and I broke my ankle at my sister's place. She owned a farm at Bundara, and I'd been down there for a weekend, and I loved being on her farm. And they had sheep, really good merino sheep, very well known stud in the area. And I was playing around with the cousins and slipped and fell and broke my ankle. And it was probably then my excuse that I really didn't want to get back into tennis. I wanted to sort of do something different. And yeah, then you meet people in your life, and you do things like get married too young, and those sorts of things happen. But, you know, the good thing that come out of that was actually buying this place down here. So by the time I got down here, I'd sort of made the decision, because my then husband was a shearer. Well, I needed to be a wool classer. So I spent a lot of time in the sheds as rouseabouting to start off with. Got to see, you know, dogs working in the shed. And I know that that's where my whole passion for the dogs come, like the respect I had for those dogs in the sheds. And you see some really, really good dogs. See some bad handlers and some really good dogs. But yeah, so that sort of situation happened, and getting into the place down here, we sort of had all sheep. So then it became, for me, it just became about being horses and sheep, because I wanted to learn how to muster. And my dad was down here a lot with us then, and I sort of learned vicariously, probably through my dad, just tagging along and watching my dad, because neither of us had much knowledge. And that's where I think it sort of evolved. It all evolved from there. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you running on your place these days?
Mostly cattle, just a handful of sheep. So yeah, just all cattle. We sort of we had this place here and then bought the place next door, and it all got a bit bigger, and I needed more dogs, and life happens. And my husband was working off farm, and I said, right, well, I'm running the farm. We sort of grew apart. He had his work off farm, and I was just, my vision is that, I had my son by then, and my vision is that I wanted to have this farm and, be able to hand that on to my son in the future. So I had to learn some skill sets about running the farm, and I needed the dogs because I couldn't afford to employ people. I needed the dogs to do the work. And honestly, I am going to say, when you are probably working stock, sheep or cattle, in the yards with your partner, it's a defining moment. And I think for me, I said to myself, I'm not copping that. I'm not going to be the gopher. I'm not going to be the one that's getting screamed at for being in the wrong place. And I'm watching. I've been like that, particularly with horses. I learned so much through my horses that I felt, even though they're a prey animal, like the flight animal, and your dog is more your prey animal, there's a lot of things that cross over between the two. And I said to myself, in an observation and being screamed at that I'm in the wrong place, is I'm not going to do it that way. I learned things that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the screamer in the yard. I didn't want to be the person having to call my dog 50 times. And that for me, I think was that really set the scene for me, that of what I wanted to do with my dogs and my horses. Yeah.
So, off that, like with your horses, how much have you taken away from your horses with your dog journey?
I think a lot. Like I trained and competed my horses at a high level at camp drafting. I was pretty successful with my horses. Had a solid team of horses, and I'd pack up every weekend and go off and compete my horses, and I won a national title.
Oh wow! Congratulations, that's
Well,
awesome.
yeah, myself and my horses, and and then in having the dogs, I'm out working stock. I just felt that I got a really good understanding of how stock worked because I was working on horses. I just think that changes the dynamic of working a mob of stock, a mob of sheep or a mob of cattle. Is when you're on a horse and you're up above and you're looking down, it just changes. It changes how you look at your mob when you're working, and it taught me a lot. So when I look at horses, and it was so much about pressure and release, it was so much about reward, but you don't give them treats to reward them. Like, you're on their back, you can't give them a treat to reward them. So why are we giving treats to our dogs to reward them? There is a different reward system for your horses and your dogs, because horses out there are exactly the same. If they're bred to work a cow, that instinct of them locking onto that cow, and when you see them cut or like in a cutting arena. It's the same in a camp draft in the yard. Cut and track and rate cattle. It's exactly the same as what a dog does, in understanding the point of balance that's going to turn an animal or control an animal. So I took from that. That's what the pressure and release thing for me is. Make them really uncomfortable and just don't give them what they want. But you don't have to use anger or abuse, or it is just getting in the way of giving them what they want, or and showing them a different way. Just, here's your option. And then it seems to click and they go, oh, that's what you wanted. That's where you wanted me to be, because, okay, you can have that. That's release,
Yeah.
That's probably
leaving them alone almost.
Yeah.
Do you still prefer to be up on a horse than on wheels these days?
100%. I do it every day.
Yeah.
Yep. You can see where your dog is. So especially when you're working young dogs, and you really get to see that, So when you're training your young dogs, and if you feel, you've got to learn to trust them, that they're going to find their right position. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And when you want to navigate that mob somewhere, like through a gate, you don't want them. You've got to be able to call them off and get them to hold the flank of the mob to drive through the gate. So when you're up on top and you're looking down, it's a big difference. And the cattle work differently with a horse than they do a bike. You can. I know because I do it. You can break your cattle to a bike, but I still don't think there's nothing like being on top of a horse working a mob of sheep or cattle. It's just so much easier.
When you were first younger and first starting out, especially coming from the horses, did you find you wanted to put yourself where the dog should be with young dogs, or was it something you just never really experienced because you always had dogs around? Like being camp drafting, for example, you are where 9 times out of you're the one moving the beast. That then, did you not want to be there with where the dog was at times, or when you're starting them?
I think when you are working stock, and particularly young dogs, so dogs that are ready to go out on a job, but they might only be 10 months old. They might be 9 or 10 months old. I don't want, I'll put them in a position if there's a cow that's going to confront that dog and it's too much for that dog to handle, I'm going to step in. I'm going to step in and I'm going to say to that cow, I use a stock whip every day. I'm going to step in and I'm going to say to that cow, not on. Number one, I'm educating my cattle, but I'm giving that dog I don't want him to have that confrontation because he's not ready. So I might get in the way and I might take that position of that dog because I don't want something like that to happen. But I feel in the process, I suppose because I'm educating my cattle, I'm feeling in the process you need to trust your dog. Your dog has got to get experience. You've just got to be wise enough to know when is the time right that dog can take that position. But when I work a mob, my dog, if I've got a fence, well, that's one side. I might be the fence on the other side. My dogs will work behind, around me, up the flank and to the lead.
Yeah.
So I'm actually letting them control the mob. If there's no fence, it's exactly the same thing. I would have a dog on the left side or the right side. I would have, however I had to steer that big bubble of cattle the dogs would be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you predominantly cattle up there? Is there a wild dog?
No.
Population up there? No,
thankfully.
Yeah, lucky.
Really lucky. Yeah, no. Oh, you might. I think we've had a rogue pig dog one time, but
Yeah.
that's not what you're talking about. Yeah, it would be just yeah.
A
Don't
particular breed of cattle at all?
Originally, so pre-drought had all Angus cows and using Charolais bulls. Post-drought, because I couldn't buy back Angus cows, they were just crazy prices. Frankly, you couldn't buy cows in calf. So I went and bought a lot of Charolais heifers and joined them, black bulls, and sort of started back there. I did end up buying really um, station cows from up at Blackwall because they were a really good buy. They were a really great learning curve. They were a really great learning curve because they were motorbike helicopter cattle.
Yep.
So the horses managed them really well, but I couldn't go into the paddock with a bike. They just clear out.
Yeah.
So you
Used to
can,
be
and
crazy.
it sort of showed me that you can actually re-educate old cattle.
Yeah.
But how did you have the same team of dogs moving in those circles to when you got those new cattle back?
Same,
The
same.
same line of dogs, like even some older dogs there.
That I was using older dogs on
Yeah.
them at the time.
How did they go managing the different stock? Like how much, not just you learning, but the dogs learning to work different types of stock? Was that an education for both
Well,
of you?
it was an education for us all, and
Yeah.
I think thankfully the thing was I had two border collies and two kelpies in what I would refer to as my A team at that time, and I did a lot of feral goat mustering through the drought. Now that's great. That is really good for your dogs. So I had a lot of confidence in the fact that I could put my dogs where I needed them to be. And I think that, once I sort of learnt where these cattle were going to run, they learnt the pattern of the paddock.
Yeah.
The very, very, very clever cattle learnt the pattern of the paddock, and I thought, well, I got to work with them. If I don't work with them, I'm just gonna be chasing them around and round and round and round. And the dogs learned that, and I could send them for pretty big distances, the ones that had to go, and that's what I'd do. And I'd send the dogs a lot earlier, the two dogs, and get them in the lead of where I knew these cattle would run to, and they would hold the lead up, and then I'd turn up with the other two dogs, and we'd sort of just spend some time with them.
Yeah.
Circle work, because I do a lot of circle work with the horses around the cattle too, and that's how I broke them in the paddock, and then let them lead off, block them up, let them lead off, block them up. Yeah, so but it was because I did feel pretty confident that I could put the dogs where I needed them to be, and I had one old border collie there when I needed him to do the job of have a bite on their nose and say you're not going out there. He was great for that. Great old dog.
So if anyone's out there tonight thinking, geez, she's got a familiar face, obviously you were on Mustard Dogs that have just finished airing.
Season 3.
Season 3. How was that experience for you?
Most amazing experience. I really loved it. I learned a lot. It was awesome. And I come out the end of it with an amazing dog. I feel just so lucky. I really do.
So that said, like, what when they're asking for applicants, like, what was your thought process like?
Yeah, what made you
When
apply?
did you apply?
I had a couple of people say to me, "Oh, you should do that," and I said, "Why would I do that? Who wants to listen to some old bird talk about what she does?" Hold on to your drink there, boy. But I honestly did. I thought nobody's going to want to, listen to me. I'm 60. What have I got to say? I have no formal training about dogs. I just do my job. And I sort of I hummed and hawed about it, but I honestly had moved this morning. I moved, 200 weaners. I broke them in the yards. I'd ridden them out about 2 hours to their paddock, and they travelled perfectly. And I thought, that's a pretty damn good job my dogs and I just did there. And I pulled up and I'm sitting on top of the hill and I'm overlooking all these hills. And I said to myself, well, why not? What would my agenda be? Why would I want to do something like that? I had to have a purpose about doing it. And so I sort of put some thought into, if I did this, what would I want to bring to the table type of thing. And I said, well, I got nothing to lose. They can laugh at me. There's going to be a lot of people apply, and believe me, there was a lot of people apply. And would you believe most of them are women? 80% of the people.
So what was that? 80%?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's a great thing. I think it's a great thing, and it's a sign of the times, which I think is really a great thing. So yeah, that was sort of what happened in that moment of when I said, well, yeah, I'm going to give this a go. And I went from there. So I had to do a video of myself and talk about my farm and talk about myself and sent that in and didn't hear anything. And yeah, I expected that. Why would they want an old girl like me? And then I had a few. They got back in touch, and I had a couple of interviews with the producers, and then I had to go to a dog school with Neil McDonald up in Queensland.
Yep.
And he got to have a look at what my dogs could do and see what I was like, and I guess decide whether I was going to be, good enough, or I was just going to cut the deal type of thing,
Off the back of that comment you just made, if you were good enough, what has this journey done for your confidence personally?
The whole am I good enough? I think, I know guys must have this, and this isn't about, the guy girl thing and trying to be equal or anything like that. But I think for me at that time, the self-doubt, every woman goes through that journey. We have this thing where we question ourselves of whether we are able or not. And that has been my whole journey of me running my own farm. And it was something that I said to myself, this was part of my agenda. And particularly then, being 60, and we become really invisible. Women become invisible. I think in farming, and particularly in my era, women have been very invisible on the farm. They've been the gophers. And there was never much acknowledgement for what they did. And quite frankly, from a very young age, I was going to defy that. I really wanted to do things for myself, and and I felt that should be recognised. And probably the source of contention why I got divorced. It really is. It was, for me, it was about being invisible and not being heard. And it's just such an intertwined thing. Like, it's not just about the social standards that the way that women are perceived when they're older. It's like the whole ageism thing, and frankly the sexism. It's part of our culture, and in saying culture, it's like it's actually part of agriculture. Remember the era that I've come through, being in the shearing sheds? Man, oh man, like, it was a tough gig. And I've seen that change to today. But in my journey, that whole thing of overcoming your self-doubt, that you don't think you're good enough because you're a woman, because you what you have to say isn't valuable because you are not respected or you're not acknowledged in your industry. That was the thing that I wanted to say to women out there, that's a mindset. That's a shit game, excuse me, that you
You're
play
right,
in
go
your
for it.
head, that you just playing it in your head all the time saying you're not good enough. Did I doubt myself during this Muster Dogs journey? Absolutely, but I'd kick myself in the ass. I would turn around and I would say to myself, you can do this. You can do this. Do not doubt it. The proof is in the pudding in every other dog that you have in your kennel. And I have some amazing dogs. So that was sort of that whole thing for me. Did I have a point to prove? Yeah, absolutely. And sadly, I think women, that is the journey for women. We feel we want to prove ourselves. But that's not anything to do with what guys do. That's us. That's what our heads tell us we should be doing it like that. And we don't need to. We can go out and do that job and we can do it differently. And that's what I've done in my time, my life, my journey, my farming. My whole Muster Dogs thing was, I think you've watched it, it probably looked a bit different to the other guys. I did it like I was here at home and I was going to work and I had my whip with me and I was just going to a job and I trained my dog like I trained every other dog. I learned great things and I'm like a sponge and I have always been a sponge and I like to take in the knowledge because I want to build this big toolbox. And that's what I did with my horses too. I just wanted to build this big toolbox and because every dog, every horse is different. And you'll use something for a dog that you'll never use for any other dog at some time, and you never stop learning. You never stop learning. And I think that for me has been the thing, that the fact that I really wanted to learn, and Muster Dogs gave me the opportunity to really rub shoulders with some amazing people. And that taught me so much. The whole milestone concept, that has been a great thing. I would say to anybody, if you're training dogs now, actually sit down and do a plan for what you want that dog to achieve. But that doesn't mean that dog will achieve it at that time. You can only work the dog that's in front of you, and they're all very different. But it gives you a goal. It gives you a goal. And I think the milestones were the things I kept going back to, that sort of, stopped me doubting myself, because I just kept saying to myself, well, do what you would do like you would normally do with every other dog. And I just kept going back to, well, I've done it. I've done it with other dogs. And if I can go and do a job here with 200 weaners by myself, muster them in, bring them in, drench them, put them through the yards with my dogs, so that I'm not doing all the walking backwards and forwards, walk them out of those yards, quietly walk them back to their paddock, put them through the gates, and they put their heads down and eat. I'm doing a pretty okay job. And that's all I kept saying to myself.
What apart from Hudson, what do you reckon a couple of your biggest takeaways would be?
I think definitely the milestones. I just think having that plan. I just think having something to set in place for yourself, that you say, well, around about this time, 12 weeks, this is what my dog should be doing. It should be interested in cattle, or it should be interested in sheep. It's a pup at 12 weeks. But in saying that, your job isn't to get that dog to work. Your job is to get that dog to want to work. And that was a big thing about the border collies and kelpies. So me getting a border collie, and I've got 3 or 4 border collies in my team. I have kelpies. I said to myself, I am really going to take this dog along. And as soon as I had this thing in my mind, is that I couldn't let the kelpies get the head start on the border collies. There was no way that was going to happen. So I was going to expose him to everything I could so that I could see what this dog had in him. And then when I would see something, I would really try and bring that out.
Yeah.
And I think what I did very, very early on for Hudson was bring the Kelpie out in the black and white coat, because that dog had such a desire and need to work sheep. He was just wide open. Yeah. So I just, you've got to have you've got to have a plan. You've got to have a milestone. That has really changed the way, like I've got 3 little Kelpie pups I'm working with at the moment, and it's exactly the same thing. It gave me a level of commitment to achieve something with the dog. And if you really want to have a great dog at the end of it, then have a plan, because you've got to have something to commit to. Just don't go along and say, oh, yeah, well, maybe tomorrow I'll put 10 minutes in with that dog, and it's a week later. Because I tell you what, they learn a lot in a week.
Yeah. And like, obviously, if he wasn't turning out for you, you couldn't just move this dog on, right? But was that, were you already a type of person that persevered and trained the dog in front of you? Or was it for you earlier, if a pup didn't suit you at certain times, you'd move it on? And if it didn't, like, how did that help you by being locked into having the one pup?
I think a lot of things that I think of there are the amount of dogs people gave me that were problem dogs. So people just give up on their dog because they have something that they think that dog should be doing.
Yeah.
Well, in having dogs that other people were not successful with, it didn't mean that I made them great dogs, but it actually taught me to look at the dog and why was the dog doing what it was doing? There is a reason they do that. You've either done something, or it's what you've created, or it's in their breeding that they might rush in at the end and have a snap on the nose or something like that. If you don't address those things, like in having those dogs that had those problems, it just made me say, well, that's what I've got to fix. That's that problem in that dog. That's the dog in front of me.
The behavior is just a symptom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. And that's just what I would look at. So I would just always work the dog in front of me. I would never say, well, that dog should be doing what that dog's doing, because it may not have that capability. You can't, there are some yard dogs that are just so straight and so direct, those truck dogs. They're brilliant at that job. You go and you put them in a 500-acre paddock, are they going to cast, are they going to cast 2-3 Ks? Probably not. Probably not. That's can be very much about their breeding. So I put a team together. I've got a dog in there that'll cast 2 or 3 Ks because I need that. It's every dog is the dog in front of you that you need to train. I've done that and it's the same with my horses. I've done that very early on.
You mentioned like how much the milestones have really helped you, and you mentioned like obviously having Neil there before, but having someone like Mick who is so structured in everything he does, how has that helped you as well?
He is extraordinary. I just don't. when you actually see what those trial dogs do and the control and the minute movements that it takes for him to get control of those sheep, the dog controlling those sheep. And then he'll go out and he'll go out to Cobar and he'll go and muster like 200 feral goats with those same dogs. So there is a man in there that his philosophy is about his dogs is that they have two roles to fill. And it comes down to exactly how much structure and control he can put into his border collies. And that's what he's actually bred. A hugely trainable mind is in those dogs. But it's Mick is like a gold nugget. I mean, it is truly, truly a privilege that I have got to sit and speak with Mick and Neil as well as far as the Kelpies. But it's just, that's just what I'm saying. Getting the opportunity to be in the room and rub shoulders with those sorts of people, it's just been. Just in conversation, you learn so much in conversation.
Mhm.
Actually, this is probably the first time we sat down with someone, and all three of us have dogs bred from the
Yeah.
same place
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
We've all got NGH collies.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't tell Nick that.
Don't tell Mick. Yeah.
Oh no, I've never thought of that, but yeah.
Yeah. So that said, and you just mentioned the brain in the dog that is developed.
Well, three completely different homes and styles of work, really. Like
Yeah,
I only
absolutely.
trial, and you're working how many, and you're doing
everything.
a bit of everything. Like it's, yeah.
How has Hudson himself helped you grow with the style of border collie he is?
I think the thing that I've become very aware of is the bond. You know, I think I have a great bond with my dogs. I suppose but the bond that I have with Hudson is truly next level, and
Sucker.
that's his temperament. That's what he's brought to me. He's probably softened me up a little bit. But he's challenged me. He truly, truly has challenged me. He's a lot of dog. I mean, I am so excited about this next 12 months because I've only scratched the surface of this dog. I
Still
can
baby.
see it.
So
Sorry.
how old is he now? Well, 18 months?
No, he is 15 months.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, he's still a baby. Like,
Yeah.
he's still plenty to get. You got another 2 years before the dog's mature. Like,
Yeah, I'm just really, really excited. And I just want to really make him solid. I mean, my thing for him every day is number one, my very first thing after muster dogs, and I've stepped into trying to trial. So that's been another thing for me. So this whole journey has said to me, I just want to be better. I just now have seen working with Mick just that level that you can get your dogs to. Like, it's one thing to be able to stop your dog and let your cattle feed through your gate. Yeah, that's a great thing. But when you work with Mick and you just get to see the finesse, that level, that said to me, I want to give this a go. I really want to have a go at trialing. So I've had a go at utility trialing and I've had a go at yard dog trialing. I haven't got to 3 sheep yet. Hudson will probably be a little bit older by the time he gets to 3 sheep, but I definitely feel that I will be able to do it. I just want the challenge. I just want the challenge of being able to do it, and I want to do the very best by the dog, but I want to be better too.
and getting the confidence now to go out and trialing, like the community that you're now going to draw to yourself is going to grow again, you know, and like-minded people, and a lot of people off farm as well, and a lot of women. So how do you think that's going to help you even flourish further?
I hope it does. What I'm going to say to you is about trialing. It's a great equalizer.
Yeah. You're sitting at the peg, the sheep don't care what genitalia you have, right?
It has been a huge personal development journey, learning to trial. Like, seriously, I could never, I feel very confident when I'm whip in hand and on my horse and I'm out doing my job on my place. And my dogs look pretty damn spectacular doing their job. People go wow when they see, one person do the job.
All I can imagine is like this female Jim Craig out there now, like the woman from Snowy River, number 3.
But
Train of thought now.
I've got some country like that out the back. Believe me, it's pretty sweet country. But then I go to a trial and it's like I've had nerves. The self-doubt is like, what do you even think you can do this for? But I walk away every trial and I just say to myself, I'm learning, the dog is learning. And it's okay. I'm not actually there to prove anything. I'm actually just there because I want to learn. I want to engage with other people. I want to see what other people's dogs are doing. It's a great community. It's a great community of people, but it is certainly very, very testing, very equalizing.
When I met you out at the Walker trial last year, was that the utility trial? Was that your first trial?
Yeah, that was my first utility trial.
Cool. What talking about like you getting the nerves and all that? Did you have to kick yourself over the line to step in? Like, did you go, I've got to do it? Like, was there a time when you thought, no, I can't do this, and you just went, no, I'm doing it?
No, I did not say I can't do this. No, I said I'm giving this a go. Let's just go do it. I'm pretty hard on myself. I have an expectation of myself, and I misdrafted, and I got really angry with myself, and then that anger sort of hung on to me a little bit for the rest of the thing, which that was a huge learning curve there. But no, I don't think that I can't do it, and I also know that Hudson, he would have just been 12 months old at that trial. I'm really confident in what I can do with that dog. He makes mistakes. I make mistakes. I'm probably making more mistakes than Hudson, and I'm making his life really difficult. But
was that the first time you'd seen a utility trial?
Yep.
Because that's death by, like, utility trialing is like death by fire. You realize that, right? Like, that is to me the most challenging form of trialing, and to just jump in there and have a crack. That's awesome. Okay.
But I didn't even know that. I didn't even know how challenging it was. There were so many things that didn't even click in my head until I went in there. So, okay, 3 sheep come out. Okay. I suppose you all, or everybody else, you think, well, there's however many else are in the yard already waiting. 3 come out. There's some already in the yard. It never even occurred to me until I did the draft and I had 3 different sheep.
Yeah.
And I hadn't broken those 3 sheep in, had I? No freaking way. So when I go out the gate, that's a whole new level.
Yeah.
Like, challenging. Maybe had I sat down and talked to everybody and I'd learned that, maybe then would have gone, I can't do that. But it never even occurred to me. I just went in and threw my hat in the ring and said, let's have a go.
I love it. I love it.
It's a good way to do it.
It is fair income, like baptism by fire. Utility trial.
Yeah, it was a shock.
Yeah. And the 10 dogs before you affect those sheep in that yard, like, what you're pulling out to try and break in.
Well, that's exactly right. It just
Yeah.
different ball game, and yeah, it was just it really. I think it is actually the most challenging thing because, like in 3 sheep trial, you're breaking those sheep in on the draw.
Yeah.
You should probably have a pretty good handle on them by the time you've received them. But and the same like then with the yard trial. Well, you're getting fresh sheep. You're getting that mob that you're working with, but it's all just very contained.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a different thing altogether. Utility trial. Yeah. I'm
Mhm.
glad
So,
I
you
didn't know.
got, so have you got the bug?
Absolutely, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So I've been to a couple of schools,
Yeah.
which has been really great, and I've learned a lot about. And it's really funny in the yard dog side of it. It's so much about you and your body position on the stock. And I really wasn't thinking about that. Like when you're out in the paddock, it's just I'm on a horse and I'm riding, but there is this whole thing about me that I especially with Hudson because he's pretty full on is I literally face up to him and give him the stare as to say slow down buddy. And yeah, and he sort of he was getting to feel that a bit, and it was actually getting me pretty anxious. So all these emotions started coming up that I don't have that happen here at home. I'm pretty cool.
Do you find you work a little bit differently and train a little bit differently now that you've started doing a couple of trials?
Oh, absolutely. A lot more repertoire has come into my training. I've done some great things with Hudson in the last 2 months, but like mate, I can reverse him up, back him up. I've never done that with the dog before.
Yeah.
And I'm just so proud of him how he's just taken to that. That's been a really great thing. And he backs. He's really solid at backing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just lots of things there and positioning. I feel I can pretty much put him anywhere, but I've taken that too, and I've gone back to a couple of my Kelpie dogs, and I've been trying to polish them up, and it's really surprising. Dogs love to learn. They love to be challenged. That's their thing. We should constantly be bringing something new to them because it just makes them better.
Actually, speaking of your collie dogs, are they of a particular line themselves, or are they from different places?
No, they are from a particular line, which was just a mate of mine, Warren Lavender. He owed me a dog. He owed me a dog, and he gave me this beautiful border collie dog. He's a really big boy. He's been a great dog. I've learned lots from him. And then the same thing. Warren gave me another female, and then a mate of his who had Warren's dogs gave me another female. So I sort of have that. But don't ask me what it is because I'm going to tell you before I got into trialing. Yes, pedigree. I always got dogs from people that had really good dogs, and I've seen their dogs work. But as for their pedigree, I didn't look at their pedigree. I'd work with that dog in front of me.
Yeah.
That's how it was. So pedigree is a whole new thing for me now too, and learning about what's important in your pedigrees.
Yes. What are touching on that? Like, what are some things that are important for you in looking at pedigrees now?
What I like is that really cool head, strong dog that can hold its space. That is really important to me, particularly working cattle. I don't like those dogs that get out the front and just want to fly in and hit the nose. And, you've got to be calling them out all the time. I like those dogs. I want to see the strength in the dog that I can send it out, stop it, and it'll sit, it'll wait, and it'll hold its ground until it either has to do something or it's simply got that cow to turn away. Because I think half the time when I see people working stock, particularly cows and calves, they do not give the cow the time to think about turning away. They'll let the dog go in and tune the cow up, and she's going to fight. They can't outfight that cow. Like, they can never, that cow outweighs them 10 to 1 probably. You get 3 dogs in on the nose. That's not doing the cow any good. If it come down to that, if it had to be that, I'd be stepping in to do something about the cow, because I don't want that confrontation. I want that cow to learn if that dog is going to hold his space, he's got the goods to do something about it, but that he's got the patience to say to her, I'm not going anywhere, you need to turn away. So that sort of strength, that's what I call a strong dog. I don't think the dogs that have to go in there and fly and hit them on the nose, I don't actually think they're strong dogs.
So, have you got a lot of similarities in your camp between breeds? Do you like a similar style of dog?
Yeah, the Kelpies are all very similar in that regard, and Hudson's probably the straightest casting dog that I had, and I've learned from Mick that me setting Hudson up, that was me looking a lot at the other border collies I have just been those really naturally really big casting dogs. Hudson was really determined just to get to the lead all the time. And I've learned from Mick how I didn't set him up properly to start off with. But, one lesson with Mick changed that with that dog. That's how quick that dog adapts and learns, pivot and changed. And it just changed his whole cast. Now he's got this amazing, beautiful big cast. But, yeah, so they've got to have big cast in the hills. They've got to have a big cast, and they've got to be big, robust dogs. That's the other thing. Big, robust dogs. My females are pretty big females too. They've got to be able to cover some country. Yeah, but all strong dogs, all cool heads. I just like cool heads. That's what I look for. Probably because I'm a hot head.
Is there any advice to someone like starting out with dogs or in the ag industry?
Yeah, get to some schools. I mean, there are so many people out there that, there's no one way to train a dog. And I think if you just go to different schools and you take away 1 or 2 things from every person, you're building an amazing toolbox. And that's what I would say. Get out, learn from people. Don't write off the old girls and the old blokes that have been around a while, because there's probably things in there that, are pretty valuable. I love listening to the old blokes around the trials. I love listening, what they got to say, what they talk about. There is a lot to be learned just sitting and having a conversation. The other thing I'd say is ask questions. Ask questions all the time. If you don't understand something, go out and ask. But ask somebody that you've seen their dog work and you say, I want my dog to work like that. Don't go and ask Joe Blow next door. Just go and find the right people, and the right people are the people that have got the dogs doing the job successfully.
Yeah.
I love your mindset about learning. Like, and you mentioned before, and I don't mean to be rude to you, like I'm 60 years old, I'm still learning, and you've just, I suppose, touched on that again, and you mentioned old blokes a couple of times there, and I recently ran my first working dog cognition school, and I was the youngest person there. Like everyone that come to, I suppose, to come and see what it was all about, they were all of an older generation that were really open minded, and I love that. Right, like
Yeah.
sometimes you hear, oh, the older guys are just stuck in their way, and it's not necessarily the case either. I love that. And you're a great ambassador for that yourself.
Yeah. No, I think it is a big thing. And I think that's, that's a lot about the invisibility thing that I want to talk about to people is that, just because we're older, we're not stuck in our ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel like I'm 60. I don't behave like I'm 60. I don't ride a horse like I'm 60. I mean, this is life. I want to be living this life and learning this life, and I want as much in my life until the day they have to dig that hole. And if there is something out there that I can learn that then I can share, especially for me, there's this whole legacy thing about, having my son take over the farm, but also my granddaughter. I mean, I now look at my granddaughter is 3, and I've already started her dog for her. Pixie is 12 months old. Imagine her by the time she's in her 50s. Look at the leg up. We're giving the younger generation. I mean, where is that going to take our dogs, and where is that going to take working stock in the future? And that's all got to be better than where it has been and where it is. Well, and it is, isn't it? Like, look at our livestock handling. Look how far we've come with handling our livestock. I mean, it's going to be a great thing in the future.
That said, have you set yourself any more milestones or goals like moving forward?
Yeah, I'm gonna really get hold of this trialing business, and you're all going to come along on that journey with me. I really want to have a go. I really want to see. I really want to see exactly what I can pull out of Hudson. Given that I've never done that, I really want to see where we are by the time he's 3, because that's when I reckon he's going to be his best, and it gives me a little time to get a feel of the whole thing.
How are you going to rate success for yourself?
By what I've learned, by what I get to the point that if somebody can come to me and and I can contribute, when I can contribute, so maybe if I can teach what I have learned, that would be wonderful. I would think that would be hugely successful, that somebody would want to learn from me. I would say that I'd feel pretty successful about that.
Sounds more important than ribbons.
Oh, God, yeah.
I love that. I love that answer.
I've never thought about that. No.
That's cool. It just talks about, it just kind of highlights your mindset and what you want to achieve. It's not about the ribbons, it's about the journey and helping other people come through. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And not just about dogs. I really want to say something to young women out there. It's about what they can actually achieve and getting past that self-doubt. Or we all self-doubt, but it is building resilience to handle that self-doubt and pick yourself up.
I think you're already on the way to that, Marlene. I really do, yeah. You're doing a good job of it.
You're doing a great job. Yeah. And you can't have positive mindset without getting rid of the negative shit first, right? And that's where your resilience comes into it there. Like, you're doing fantastic. Now, any little posts come up, like not even dog related, they're just about, women in the industry and resilience and building, like, they're inspiring. So keep pumping them out.
Yeah. No, that's just such a really big thing for me. I just because we all get stuck in this thing about women needing to prove themselves and do it like blokes do. No, you don't. We don't need to do that as women. We just need to do it our own way, just like the blokes are doing. We just need to be confident and comfortable that we can do it our way. And that's what I want to really say, because it's not about women can do what men can do equally, because I'm sure this will upset lots of girls out there. We aren't actually equal. Shouldn't want to even be equal, because we can be better if we do it our way. Just find what that is and be comfortable in that space.
It's just different, right?
It's just
different.
It's just different, and just be really, because that's where happiness and joy comes into it. I love getting up and going down to my kennels, saddling my horse up, getting my dogs out and going and working my dogs. I just, there is so much joy in that. And every time I achieve something with them, that's made my day. That's it. And if, there's no stress, if you can get rid of stress by doing that, I think you're on a good thing. I mean, dogs and horses are just really good for your soul.
And heartbreaking all at the same time.
Yes, there comes the heartbreak. There does come the heartbreak with it.
Talking about making your day, Laura, what's your question of the day?
Question of the day, or of the podcast: if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I don't know.
Oh, geez, one food for the rest of my life. Well, I'd still be thinking about my health and well-being. Probably avocados.
Avocado? Why avocados?
Because they're just good.
They are so good, and they're just
go with everything.
Yeah, they've got everything in
there. Avocado.
Avocados, yeah.
What would yours be, Laura?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It depends.
Oh my God.
One food for the rest of my life.
Mine would be bacon. I could eat bacon for all day.
I think I'd be lost without tea, if I'm being honest. Like just a good cup of tea.
Yeah, right.
I could live off just a cup of tea. So
it's a pretty tough question, isn't that one, actually?
Yeah.
Because now you're making me think, I'd really like mangoes.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about breakfast. Marlene, thank you very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate you jumping on. Know you got plenty happening, so thanks heaps. Really appreciate it.
Great, guys. Thanks for having me.
So everyone listening back, or everyone that tuned in live, thank you for your time. And please remember, we learn every day. The day we stop learning will be a sad day. Thank you.
Thank you.